Hey, I'm Andy McMillan, and today we're going to talk about transition. Not transitioning, just transition. Hey, I'm Andy. Thanks so much for showing up today on my YouTube channel, podcast, however you're taking in this content. I'm so thankful for you guys being a part. And today, I'm really excited because I'm going to spend some time talking about the subject of life transition. We all have transition in our life from the time we graduate high school, trying to figure out adulthood, to marriage, kids, retirement, and well, I guess you also transition to death, but I don't think you get to think through that one. Anyway, I've got a really good friend here with me today that we're going to talk about just transitioning in life. What does that look like? How do we walk through that process? How do we trust God through that process, and all the above? And my friend here that is with me is Michael Southerland. How about you, Michael? How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Andy. I'm so glad to be here, getting back on this podcast.
I know you've been with me a couple of times. You were in a couple of the first episodes. I'm trying to think of what episode this would be. I stopped putting the numbers in the titles a while back, and I actually, this may be close to 2 digits, or no, we're past 2 digits. This may be close to getting out of the teens, which so this would be close to 20, somewhere in there. I don't know. I have to go back and look, but we're getting up there. We're getting podcast old.
I know you're really we're getting this thing moving. I say we. I mean, you're getting this thing moving, and then I come along for a couple of the stops every once in a while.
It's fun, man. And to be honest, I actually enjoy the episodes with people as much or more than I do doing them by myself. It's just fun to get to engage with different people. For those of you who don't know that are watching this, my wife's been on here a couple times with me. I've actually got a couple of special guests coming in the next few episodes. Well, not in the next few episodes, over the next several episodes that I'm excited about. Jessica is going to be doing some episodes with me again here shortly. But yeah, it's just fun. So for those of you who don't know Michael, maybe you've never seen the other episodes, which by the way, you should go back, check them out. Michael is a senior at SAGU, Southwestern Assemblies of God University in Waxahachie, Texas. And he's been going through school there for almost 4 years, obviously, because he's getting ready to graduate. And we're talking about life transition today because he is in a life transition. He's getting ready to leave college and begin his career as a pastor or someone in ministry. And so talk to us a little bit about that. What's that looked like for you? How have you been feeling these last few months as you're getting ready to cross that finish line?
I tell you what, it's very bittersweet. I think that's definitely the word here. There's definitely an excitement because obviously I'm going to school for ministry. So getting finally the opportunity to kind of jump full time, not just having to volunteer, lead in like certain capacities, but actually get to do it full time is something that's very exciting. But I think the issue is it's almost like, oh shoot, like we're really going now. Like this is really happening. So definitely like just the topic of transition, it's like I'm about to transition not just into a new kind of season of doing something different, but it's also like moving to a different place that I've never really been to before. So a lot of different things are happening at the same time. So obviously I feel like when any senior or anybody kind of gets into the moment when they know that, they're about to go to somewhere different, they kind of shut down and get a little bit nervous of what's about to happen next. And that's definitely something to happen for me. But what's been amazing is to see how God's really led me into a place where he's really shown me about really trusting in him. I feel like a lot of times as Christians, we love talking about, well, just trust in God, just trust in God, just trust in God, until we kind of get to a moment when we actually have to trust in God. And then it gets a little bit more difficult. So it's really been exciting to see how God's really worked on me and kind of getting from a place instead of being scared about the future to getting to a place where I'm excited to see what's going to happen next. So.
Yeah, so for context, you technically don't have a job lined up at this current moment for right after school, right? Am I correct in saying that?
Yes. So I don't actually have Yeah, it's been a minute. I don't actually have a job lined up at the moment. I have some interviews at certain places, but I don't have anything that's lined up for sure yet. So
That's called a humble brag, in case anyone is curious.
a little
I
humble
got a couple
brag
job
action.
interviews. I got a couple job interviews, but
Well, I just want you to know
nothing's in writing yet.
At least you know that I'm trying. See, at least
true.
you know that I'm trying to
That's
put myself out there a little bit.
That's true. I mean, a lot of people, when they go through transition, it causes them to just freeze up and they don't know what to do. They don't know, like, okay, I know I'm in transition. I need to go figure something out. But like, you're being proactive about it. You're choosing to really work towards where you want to be. And that's a big part of transition.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that's what's really important about transition in general, is that sometimes you get to make the choice of transitioning from one place to another, whether it's you maybe not like your job anymore, so you're starting to feel like maybe something's new. And then there's sometimes you kind of get pushed into a transition where it's like, well, now this time's coming up and you got to get pushed into like the liminal space of life. So it's definitely more interesting. I'd much rather be in a place where I'm choosing to transition rather than kind of getting pushed into a transition. But it's exciting either way. So
yeah, I mean, college does that. You have 4 years. You're going to spend time working towards a goal to graduate, and then when you graduate, I mean, it's game on. You gotta go do something. Or as we used to say in youth group, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
Yes.
Right? Like you gotta go.
Exactly.
You gotta go do something. When do you? Because I know you've got some things you want to share. We'll jump into that in just a moment. But when do you feel like you first begin to feel that transition? At what point in the timeline? Was it like a month ago, several months ago? And then also, what did it feel like? How did you begin to really feel transition in your life personally?
So I think definitely it was the beginning of this semester. So since it's my senior year, last semester, it didn't really feel real. Like, obviously we kind of had everybody was talking about like, this is the last year, and it didn't really like mean a lot to me personally. But at the beginning of the semester, I remember after everybody was like, this is your first day of school, almost like it's your last first day of school for the semester or whatever. And it was almost like, oh, wow, this is really happening. Something's really happening. And at first I kind of just pushed it away. I was like, I got time, and whatnot. But it was probably halfway through the last month where I really started to notice. I was like, hey, this, graduation date is coming up pretty fast. And if I don't have anything, it's going to be a real struggle. So I got to start kind of moving at least somewhat forward instead of kind of just putting it off, which I think it can become pretty easy to kind of put things off, especially when you're going through a transitional season of life. But so it was probably around halfway through February. We had a little bit of a winter break at school. And it was about after that when somebody was like, oh, we only have 8 weeks or 9 weeks left of school. And I was like, oh, this is coming up pretty fast. So that was definitely a big moment for me where I knew I was like, okay, I got to start actually getting something done and trying to move and see what's next.
Have you considered failing a couple classes to buy you some time?
You know what? I would be lying if I said it. I didn't think about it. Just like for a minute, I was like, you know what would happen? I could just fail one class and then I just have a fun, easy next semester. I just have a good next semester. And I just spend all of next semester looking for a job. And I just goof off the whole time. But then obviously I saw that SAGU bill and I was like, it's probably not the best decision of my life to go and fail a class just so I can live here another semester.
It's probably good call. Good call on your part.
Yeah.
No, that's good. So tell me a little bit about what that felt like. Like when you say I begin to feel transition, it began to get real for me. What did that look like?
I think it's somewhat of like an uneasy feeling. I think because obviously as people, one of the things we really strive for is somewhat of like stability and somewhat of an idea of like, well, this is where I'm at, this is okay. And then we can build out from the place that we're stable in. So having an understanding that I'm about to be uprooted from where I am right now and moved on to somewhere different, it became a pretty scary thought. Especially since I didn't really have anything lined up. I didn't really have any area that I knew, like I felt really called to, where I felt like, oh, well, I need to go to this place of America, or I need to go and get this job here in this area or whatnot. So it was definitely a scary feeling at first. just having the idea of, well, I got to go and do something different or do something that I've been studying about, but actually getting to do it in a new place of the world where I don't really know anybody as well as I know people where I'm at in my current stage of life. But it's been really eye-opening too. I think at first I was kind of scared, uneasy. I was a little nerve-wracking a little bit. Honestly, there was a part of me that was pretty frustrated with God there for a little bit because I almost felt like I was like, God, you've already prepared me all these 4 years. Why can't things like line up almost? I was kind of frustrated with God. I was like, God, why can't there already be a job lined up that I'm ready for? Like, God, why can't I already be in a very strong relationship with somebody so I know, okay, well, this needs to be an area of my life I need to move to? Or God, why couldn't you have called me to this part of the world so I know, okay, I need to be looking for a job in this part of the world? But instead, I kind of felt I was kind of in a place where I was like, God, well, I don't know what to do. But God really opened my eyes to that. And he said, well, what if instead of thinking, well, God, what am I supposed to do? I understand that, well, now God can use me wherever he wants to, because there's nothing limiting me from going to one place or having to get a job here or having to have this. It's almost opened me up to a place where I'm like, well, if God wants to send me anywhere, I honestly just can. And it's so much easier to go wherever God wants me to go. So at first was kind of a scary, nerve-wracking thought, kind of led into something like a really real freedom, almost a freedom of understanding that, well, wherever God wants me to go, I can go. And if he wants me to go here, I don't have anything holding me back. I don't have anything holding me back from having to go somewhere because I have to feel like I need to be in that place. Instead, God can just take me wherever he wants to. And I'm just at the point where I'm really just trusting in him and knowing that he's leading whatever the next steps of my life are. And I'm okay with that.
No, that's really good. I think oftentimes when we go through transition, just exactly as you said it, it's scary. But everybody deals with transition in their life, and I think for those who may be watching this, that you say I've already graduated college. I hear you, but it's really important that you understand that regardless of whether or not we're talking about graduating college or getting married, or even having kids or career shifts, whatever those transitions are in our life, that they have some similar foundations. And I know for me, when I've gone through some transitions in my life that were career based, I know that I found myself finding maybe some frustrations about like the areas of life that I was in. And not only that, but just really not just finding frustrations in life, but also just finding less grace for some of the people that I was around or some of the decisions that were being made. And I begin to feel like that restlessness of, oh, it's time to make a change. It's time to get ready to move on. And so I think that like being able, even though that's different, maybe a little bit than what you're feeling now, I feel like they have some similarities, and being able to pick up on that and recognize that, oh, this probably means that God's getting ready to shift me. This means God's getting ready to move me. It's obvious in your role, right? Like there's nowhere for you to go. It's obvious in your role. There's no other college that you could go to and continue to do a bachelor's degree unless you just, started over or do a master's. But I mean, I guess you could do a master's, but people with a master's degree and no experience are called unemployable. And so the shout out for all of you that are thinking about doing that. Nay, you're going to have a hard time finding a job. Don't do it. Go get a job, then go do a master's. And this is why very few universities want me to teach. And so that right there, but it's the truth. I mean, feeling that transition, knowing that transition's coming and being able to be aware of it's good. So tell me a little bit about like some of the things that you're processing in this season and really like, what have you learned in this transition season? What does it look like to walk through that, and what can people hope to get out of their own transition season?
For sure. I think some of the things, especially just using my experience over the last few months as an example, I think some of the things that you need to process is honestly being a little bit like honest with yourself, like being honest with how the transition is making you feel. A lot more, I think at the beginning, I mean, obviously I've grown up and I've known Christ for some time. I've been in church for some time. So it's easy to kind of just have this idea of, oh, no, trust in God, it'll be fine. But it almost took me to a place where I had to be open and honest with myself and God. And I said, you know what, God, this season of my life kind of sucks right now. Like it kind of stinks that I have to go through, not knowing what's next and whatnot. So I think the first step is kind of being honest with yourself, telling yourself, you know what, this is kind of tough. This is tough. Like maybe because for some people, maybe it's a transition where, okay, I know I need to do something next. And I'm like, I want to go look for something next. But for some people, they just get pushed into a new season. For me, that's kind of what I feel like. I'm getting kind of pushed into a new season, even if I'm not 100% feel like I'm 100% ready for it. But some people kind of get pushed out of, you may get pushed out of a job and you have to go find a new job. You may get pushed out of a relationship you thought was really stable and really good, and you have to get pushed out of that into back and not being in a relationship. So sometimes you get pushed into that. And I think the first step is really just to be honest and with God and say, you know what, this kind of sucks right now. And this is kind of tough to go through. But once I was able to admit that, I think what opened up to me is really allowing myself to trust in God more than just what I could do. I think it can become really easy as a Christ follower to know things about Jesus, know things about God, know things about the Bible, and just think like, well, okay, these are great things, but it's because I know them that they're good. Like, because I know what's going on. Okay, this is good. Yeah, God can work in my life as long as I'm in control of this certain thing, and then he can work inside of this certain thing. But once you get into a place where you're not really in control at all and you're just kind of waiting, you almost get pushed into a place where it's like, well, God, like, I'm really believing that you do have it all under control. And something that's been really beneficial to me is just waking up every day and saying, God, you know what's going to happen today. If it's, somebody's going to maybe I reach out to somebody and a job pops up, or, whatever may happen today, Lord, I'm going to trust in you. And I just want to do whatever you want me to do. It's just being open with an open prayer every morning, just saying, Lord, throughout this season of transition in my life, whatever is next, Lord, let me be open to it. And if it is from you, let it be evident that it is from you. Let me have clarity. Let me have peace that whatever is next is honestly from you. And I know it's from you. And what's been amazing is I've been doing that, and I don't have something that's 100% clear yet or anything like that. But I still wake up every day and I say, Lord, at the end of the day, I'm going into ministry because I love you and I believe in you. And so it's almost like putting your money where your mouth is, and you just get to a place where you say, Lord, today's your day, and you know what's going to happen. You know what happened yesterday. You know what's happening today, and you know what's going to happen tomorrow. So I'm going to not trust in myself and what I know, and I'm just going to trust in you that you're going to provide when is needed to provide. And so something for me is just having a mindset of every morning, not just kind of living off one moment, but really waking up and being intentional every day, saying, Lord, today's for you, and today I'm going to do whatever you want me to do. And the next season of my life, I'm trusting in you that you're going to provide. And that's been a really good thing for me.
No, that's good. Can you speak to how you've balanced in this season? Because this is a tension that everybody feels, I think, in seasons of transition. The willingness to wait on God, but also the willingness to go out and look for it. I think a lot of people say, man, I'm just, I've heard people say I'm waiting on the Lord. And their version of waiting is sitting around, twiddling their thumbs, hoping that something just falls in their lap. Meanwhile, on the other side of that, you've got people who are extremely pragmatic and maybe not as much in the willingness to really seek the Lord for the next step. And their answer is, I'm just going to go out and find something. How do you walk that tightrope between being proactive about your future and trusting in God to provide what you need?
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that's a healthy balance. You want to have a little bit of both. Obviously, all throughout the Bible, it doesn't condone laziness and just sitting around and doing nothing. What God wants us to do is get up and work and do something with our lives, despite just sitting around and just waiting on everything to kind of fall into our laps. So it's definitely a healthy balance of, first off, kind of putting yourself out there. I know for me, like I had to, work on my resume to get it all good, work on all my references, that they're all up to date and everything like that. And I would look online and I would talk to the pastors around me and I'd say, hey, do you know any places? And I talk to all the people around me, say, Lord, well, or I go and talk to them and say, is there anything that's kind of popped up, or is there anything that you've kind of heard about already? And that's not always to guarantee answers, but you're always going to want to be on the lookout. And then once you start getting opportunities, I think it's important to just through prayer to understand that this is something that really God wants for me, instead of just, the first opportunity that comes by, all right, this is it. I'm taking it. Obviously it's important to pray through that. And it's almost like putting yourself out there. And then when you put yourself out there, you say, well, God, if this is from you, then it'll come, and then it'll come through, And it's just in a place where it's like, well, Lord, if this is really something you want me to do, let me have peace in my heart about it. Let me feel clarity that this is the right thing to do with my life. But it's also, it's putting yourself out there in a way where whatever you might need to do, if it's for a job or if it's, I almost hear, I hear a lot of guys, especially here at SAGU, who will talk about like relationships with my wife. And it's like, well, God will just, bring her into my life one of these days. And I'm like, dude, that sounds great. And I'm really praying for that for you, but you probably got to get out of your room and stop playing Xbox if you really want that to happen. Like, you got to kind of do something. You got to put yourself out. Like, you're supposed to find a wife, you're not just have it, pop up at your door. So I think it's important to kind of step out and do something. But while you're doing it, you're praying, and you're really focusing on what God wants you to do rather than just what you can do. Don't let it be upon your own like skills and whatever you can kind of find to try to find the first thing, but have a healthy balance of both.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think that a lot of people struggle with leaning like to one side or the other of that. And I know for me, I'm a little more on the pragmatic side. And so there's part of me that is just I'm a hustler in just like natural tendencies. I am a recovering workaholic, right? Like, I'm just a guy who believes in going and doing what it takes to knock something out and to knock it out of the ballpark and get to where I need to be in the next season. But there's also just that learning to wait, learning to trust, and learning to be confident that God's going to bring what you need in the right timing. And that's frustrating. I remember, for those of you who don't know, Michael was in my youth ministry several years ago in Florida. And I remember going through that season of transition. And it was a tough transition because we had just, gone through a lot with that church and invested a lot in that church. But there was a time where we knew that season was coming to an end, but I definitely didn't know where or when that would be. I probably knew about 6 months before we even started having conversations with anybody about going somewhere, and just not knowing and saying, God, I don't want to just move to move. I want to move because I know this is from you. And having the willingness to go through some doors that actually didn't end up taking us to where we ended up. We went through several doors and just, said, God, if this is an opportunity from you, I'll trust it. And we would walk through the door and something would not work out. One place that we walked through the door, they offered us a job, but the money wasn't going to work to support my family in the area of the country that we were going to go in. Another job was a job that we probably would have taken if they had said yes, but they said, you know what? We have an internal person that we're going to hire. And so we didn't get that job. And then the place where we moved here in Oregon opened up, and it was such a better fit than either one of those other jobs would have been for the season of life that we're in. We're in a great family-focused community. When we begin to move, I said there were 4 things that I kind of do well in ministry. There were 4 things that I really enjoyed doing, and I was good with moving somewhere where I could do 3 out of those 4. And every job was like 2 of those 4, and there was one that was even 3 of those 4. But here, where I moved to, it was actually all 4 of them. And it was the only place that we talked to that really said, we would love for you to do X, Y, Z, double Z, whatever, like all 4 of those. And it was the only place that said, all of the things that you want to do, we want you to do when you come here. And that was just a confirmation for me that, oh, this is a God thing. This is a good thing that you have planned for me. And even though I probably could have found something quicker, I could have found something in a different location, maybe even closer to home. this was the best place for me to land in this season. And so it's tough, but balancing that pragmatic with trusting in God is hard.
Oh yeah, for sure. And see, I love stories like that because I think sometimes, especially when you're going through a season of transition, it can become really easy to become very hesitant, especially if jobs aren't, or I mean, we're speaking on jobs specifically. For jobs, like if you haven't heard from something in a while and then something pops up, there's something inside of you that really wants to pull and just say, okay, this is it. Like, this is the one. And even when you show up and you might feel like this isn't it, but there's a part of you that can be a little bit fearful and think, okay, this is the one. And this is what's going on. And that's why I think prayer during this season is so important. It's important to know that, sometimes doors will open up and sometimes you'll think this is it and maybe they'll say no, or sometimes maybe they'll say yes and you'll just have a feeling where you're just like, no, there's something off. This isn't where I'm supposed to be. So it's important to kind of be patient in this season. It's almost it's important to be patient and understand that, well, the Lord's going to bring something that's right. As long as I keep on, I'm going to keep on looking out. I'm going to keep on trying to find whatever I need to find. The Lord's going to provide whatever is necessary and whatever's good, what he wants you to do, as long as you're completely, just being obedient to him and what he has for you. Because maybe something that I kind of heard is that sometimes you get sometimes you might get open doors and you'll know this isn't it. And sometimes you might get a few different doors and you might feel like, well, maybe all of these have good things for it. And so sometimes it's important to notice that maybe sometimes God will say, no, you need to go here. And that's good. But sometimes there might be a few different options. And God might say, well, I'm going to bless you no matter which one you choose because you're being obedient to me in each one you choose. So it kind of depends on, it obviously varies from certain people to certain people, but I think it's important to just, trust in the Lord and say, he's going to provide he's going to provide the best thing for you. He's going to provide the best thing. It might not be, it might not be the most money that the other ones get. It might not be in the best area that you were really expecting it to be in, but God's going to provide the best opportunity that's for you, for your family, as long as you're just trusting in him. And it's important to kind of be in prayer and be in intercession for, that whatever's happening, that it'll be clear and you'll have peace about the option that you're going into. And instead of being fearful or making a decision because you're kind of nervous about the next season of life or making a decision, I think one of the biggest things that Christians kind of struggle with, especially going through transition, is making decisions out of comfortability. I think a lot of the times it can become very, very easy to make decisions because they're closer to home, because, I can get a job in this area because I have friends in this area, or, I can get a job in this because I kind of know some people there. There's some housing places that I already know of. I want to make a job because offers the most money. So I know I'm going to be financially stable if I choose that. And one of the biggest things that I would encourage all of our listeners is that don't make decisions in transition out of fear and out of this need for comfortability, right? Because sometimes you might choose the comfortable thing and you could be 5-10 years down the road and you'll look back and you'll say, man, I really wish I would have chosen something else instead of just choosing what was comfortable at the time, instead of choosing something that might have been uncomfortable, but would have grown me into the person who God really wants me to be and being obedient to him. So it's important to just be making decisions, and say, God, it's a scary prayer to pray, but it's saying, God, use me in whatever area, whatever way you want to use me, whatever you want me to go and do, I'm going to go and do, but open the doors that are right for me and give me clarity and peace about this next, position or next place that I'm going to go into, and just make it evident that this is really from you. And as we can tell, God usually always upholds his part in that, and I think it's kind of scary for me because I haven't felt something yet, but it's a part of trusting in him and having faith in him, is that when the thing comes along, you'll know it's from him. And then you can go into the next season of life knowing that, okay, this was something that was really from God and I didn't make a decision out of fear or frustration or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I think just wrapping up, the couple of times that I've moved, that in some way it almost didn't make any sense logically, but I knew this was the right thing in my heart. Those are the moments that I remember the most. Like, for instance, when I moved to Florida, I was on staff at a thriving, newer, growing church. That they were top 50 fastest growing churches in America. We went from the first Sunday I was there, was 680 people. The last Sunday I was there was 1,584. Like, I'll always remember that number. because I was there less than 2 years, and that's just explosive growth for a church. We more than quadrupled a youth ministry. We took it from like 30, I think it was 33 was the first number. The last week that I was there, or the highest week that we had just in like a normal week, was like 145. We were averaging about 130 that last semester I was there. It was just exploding. And I say that to say this, that it looked bizarre to leave that, to move to a rural town in Florida, to take a youth group that was falling apart in a building that was underkept. Like, the building didn't look good. There was paint chipping off the walls. It was in horrible condition. And I went from like a brand new, awesome baller facility to a facility being held together with like chewing gum, right? It was not
orange.
It was not good. And so we spent money painting. We spent money like putting in drywall. We built stages. We did a ton of stuff in that facility and like worked it to get it to a place that felt much better. And so I think most of it was actually taken care of by the time that you got there. But I mean, it was in rough shape when I first got there. But we knew it was the right move. We knew it was the right place that God was calling us to. And we knew that God called us to that place for a specific season. And even though that season was difficult, even though that season was tough, there were lots of opportunities for me to grow as a pastor that I would have never had otherwise. There were lots of opportunities for my wife and I to grow together that we wouldn't have had in the environment at the church that was exploding, because I wouldn't have had the same amount of time to invest in our relationship as I did in Niceville. There was also much more of a family, hey, put your family first focus in Florida. And so there are things that I'll always deeply appreciate for my time there. And so, and then the other one was just when I went into ministry to begin with. I mean, I left a job that if I had stayed, the second year I was supposed to make about $100,000 that year, like just with like how everything was looking. I had a couple $1 million in business that was looking like it was going to go through that year. I was going to make a really good income that year. And I even had people stop me and say, hey, don't you think you ought to wait a year or two and like rake in some of this money before you go be a youth pastor? And I can remember sitting in my living room like week number 2 as a youth pastor, making, $25,000 a year, hearing gunshots going off in my living room and thinking, maybe I should have waited, right? Maybe when you got little old ladies knocking on your doors asking for cigarette money at midnight because their welfare check doesn't come till the next day. Those are like legitimate experiences. And I at first glance, you go, maybe I should have waited. But in hindsight, I see, man, God really did something in me through that season. And because I trusted him, because I was willing to go, there are significant things in me that happened. Well, what as just like a final thought, what would you say to somebody who's beginning to feel transition starting in their own life?
Yeah, for sure. If you're starting to feel transition, I think it's important to kind of take it a little bit easy on yourself, especially if you're going to get pushed out. And it's either if you're getting pushed out, if you're having to look for something new. You know what? If the opportunity doesn't arise that day, it's all right. It's all right to just try to trust in God through prayer every day. Let it be a daily thing in your life, not just something that happens every once in a while, but every day. Just say, Lord, if this is something that you want, let it happen. I think something that's really been really big for me is kind of looking through the life of Joseph and through Genesis in the Bible, because most of all the transitions in his life were being pushed into something new. And sometimes it felt like it was a lot worse than the one that he was in, the season of life he was in before. But it's amazing to see how through each and every different season within Joseph's life, it's important to recognize that God was always with him. Right. So if you're going through that season of life and transition right now, it's important to recognize that God's with you. God sees you here. God sees you just as you did on days before, and he'll see you in days in future. He sees you right now. He sees where you're at, and it's gonna get better, right? But it's important to just trust in him and know that whatever's next is going to be a good thing. And it's remember that God's always with you, and that God's timing is perfect. God's timing, he knows what's going on. He knows what's going to happen in the future. Because if you look at Joseph's life, he wouldn't have gotten to the place he would have been at the very end of the story if he didn't go through all the different things that were pretty tough throughout the story. So it's important to remember that God's with you, and God's going to take care of you. But you just got to have faith in him and trust in him that something better is to come. And it's a hard thing for sure, but it's something that you just do every day, and you just make it a daily thing. Take it day by day. Put yourself out there where it needs to be, and let God do all the works of opening doors that need to be opened, and just trust in him.
That's good. No, that's good. Well, thank you so much for hanging out, Michael. If you're listening to this and you are a single woman between the ages of about 20 to 26, is that too old for you?
Sure. 26.
26
well,
sounds like a good number.
Why not? Yeah.
Michael's single, ladies. So,
if I find my wife through your podcast,
if you find you would not be the first person who owes me for finding their wife, by the way.
Yeah, we'll get to work on that
this way, but we both know I've been trying already. So
I know you have been trying. I appreciate it.
So you're a harder sell than I thought you would be.
Dang.
I mean, look at me, and I got married. Look at you. You should be easier in theory.
All right, I'm sorry.
Just throwing that out there. I mean, the only thing I've got going is a good head of hair. That's it. From the hair down,
good hair.
There's nothing real appealing. But from the hair, I do have good hair.
Yeah.
So just throwing that out there. No, but if you're a single lady, reach out to my buddy Michael, because he needs a good woman. So just throwing that out there. But thanks so much for hanging out today, man. It's been fun to catch up with you a little bit. I know God's got some great things in store for you. I know that he's got a call in your life, and I know that this next season is going to be fruitful because of how you've lived out these days in college. And so I'm excited to see what that next step looks like. Well, until next time, you're watching my podcast. I'm Andy McMillan. Take a second, like us on the podcast, or like this video on YouTube, subscribe, let us know that you're enjoying it. And then also share this with somebody maybe that you know who's going through a transition in their life. Not transitioning, but going through a transition. Until next time, you're watching the Andy McMillan podcast.